Okay.
Now, it's the Monitor's Mic with your host, Stella Cement.
Welcome to the Monitor's Mic, where we talk oversight, policing, and you. I'm Stella Cement, your host and the Independent Police Monitor for the City of New Orleans. And with me is Chriselle Williams, our Deputy Police Monitor. This show is your go-to source for discussing policing, law enforcement oversight, and how it all impacts you. From the Office of the Independent Police Monitor, we offer an independent perspective on city government. The Office of the Independent Police Monitor, OIPM, serves as a crucial civilian oversight body for the New Orleans Police Department, the NOPD. We ensure transparency and accountability within the police department by making sure the NOPD follows their policies, abides by the consent decree and the sustainment strategy, and is currently compliant with all local, state, and federal laws. Our office operates independently from the NOPD and from the federal monitors. What do we do day to day? We take complaints of officer misconduct from the public and from police officers. We review misconduct investigations conducted by the NOPD's Internal Affairs, which is called the Public Integrity Bureau. We're on call 24 hours a day, every day of the year for officer-involved shootings and critical incidents. And we will go to the scene and monitor the force investigation from start to finish. We're advisory members of the Use of Force Review Board and the NOPD's disciplinary hearings. We run the Community Police Mediation Program. We engage the community to ensure your voice, opinions, and concerns are heard. We, your hosts, are not police officers, but we are experienced attorneys from the criminal legal field, dedicated to transparency and accountability. We encourage you to call in today with your questions, comments, and concerns. And today we particularly want you to call in, and you'll learn why in a moment. But while we may not be able to address individual cases, we are committed to following up with you. So with that, let's learn more about today's guest. Chriselle?
Today we are joined by Chief Dwayne Johnson, who began his 28-and-a-half-year career with New Orleans Police Department in 1974, progressing through all classified ranks to that of Major, and appointed to Deputy Superintendent of the Technical Services and Operations Bureaus. In 2001, Chief Johnson was sworn in as Superintendent of the NOPD, serving in that capacity for 7 months during a mayoral transition period, overseeing designated 9/11 national security events such as the Super Bowl and Mardi Gras. In 2002, Chief Johnson retired and accepted a position as the VP and Director of Security and Emergency Preparedness with DM Petroleum Operations and the M&O contractor for 13 years to the U.S. Department of Energy Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Chief Johnson returned to the NOPD in 2015, where he now serves as the Director of Academics for the Police Academy. He is responsible for the quality and effectiveness of department training programs. Chief Johnson holds a master's degree in educational administration from the University of New Orleans. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chief Johnson, especially in all of this weather that we're experiencing.
And I just want to plug our call-in number because today we really want to hear from our listeners with any recommendations that they might have about the NOPD Academy's training plan that they're proposing for 2026. So I'm just going to plug the phone number, and we'll do that occasionally throughout the show so that way people can call in with any recommendations they have on training that they would like to see next year for new recruits and for experienced officers. And our phone number is 504-582-9422. Again, that's 504-582-9422. And you can also comment on our Facebook Live.
So, Chief Johnson, I just want for the listeners that are tuned in, just to set the stage a bit, because a lot of people, don't know what exactly the academy does or what are the positions in the academy or the and leadership in that. So, in your position, can you tell us what a curriculum director does?
So I'm responsible for the quality review and development of instructional materials, the lesson plans, the test, and I also administer the detailed training needs assessment process and complete the annual master training plan for all Academy offered programs.
And the annual training master plan, that's being developed right now?
Yeah, I'm working on that plan now, meeting with different groups and focus groups on the 2026 plan.
So you're here to get community feedback into the NOPD's training curriculum for next year. Let's start with this. Why is community feedback important to this plan?
So our mission is to provide quality, recruit, field, and in-service and professional development training programs which are centered in the best practices of constitutional and community policing. So we ensure that all recruits, officers, supervisors, and civilian personnel receive comprehensive training to understand and apply the law, adhere to policy and procedures, and effectively fulfill their duties and responsibilities. But the training has to reflect the community expectations that officers police diligently in a professional manner. They have an understanding and commitment to the constitutional rights of the individuals they encounter, and employ strategies to build community partnerships that sustain public trust, peace, and safety.
You know, that is so important. We frequently say on this show that the community is not an obstacle to police work, but is the greatest asset to police work. And when you have a strong relationship with the community, when you are fully working, understanding the expectations of the community, how to work with the community, how to talk to the community, you're going to have a better experience as an officer, but also you're going to get more information that will help you with effectively preventing and solving crime.
Yeah, it builds the legitimacy of our mission. And we're looking to the community to provide ideas that could identify opportunities for improvement and then translate that into training priorities in the upcoming year.
That's great. So what type of feedback are you looking for today?
Just general ideas and thoughts of the community in regards to what training would be open to improve upon, what areas that they feel is important to our mission of community policing and also constitutional policing.
So say somebody calls in with training recommendations of training that is already occurring. Would you be able to let the caller know?
Sure. I think in a lot of cases we may be there already proceeding with those type of initiatives, but obviously what we're more engaged in now is in problem solving in neighborhood concerns, and to hear those concerns and how an individual officer on that one-on-one basis can make a difference in that community or that neighborhood problem is significant to us.
Ooh, that's such a good point. Again, it's 504-582-9422. Call in if you have any ideas on problem solving or neighborhood concerns, any general ideas about what you would like to see our officers improve upon or further hone their skills in. You know, this is your chance to make sure your voice is captured in this plan. And earlier this week, Chief Johnson, you attended a public forum with our office and with the community. We had a couple participants from different police community advisory boards and different community members and individuals who have been affected by the criminal legal system, as in they've had investigations that have been held by the NOPD, and they've been very vocal in giving feedback. And they were able to vocalize to you some of their own input or questions about the 2026 master training plan. Can you share some of the feedback that you got on Tuesday night with our listeners now?
Yeah, some of the ideas offered included training recruits in the cultural aspects unique to New Orleans, such as second line parades, Mardi Gras Indians, even to the point of the food that's common to New Orleans, red beans and rice. A lot of our recruits are from out of state or out of parish and may not be familiar with the customs and traditions that they encounter. And also some input was gained on how officers can become more engaged in problem solving for neighborhood concerns, Another area was crime victims should be informed by investigating officers of their rights and resources available to them. So that's some areas that we could pursue.
Great, great.
And if they have anybody that wanted to tune in and to see what actually the discussion was at that public forum, feel free to actually go onto our website. I'm sorry, not our website, our social medias on Instagram and also on Facebook. And we have that public forum up there. And if you have any ideas that you can't relate to us today, still feel free to comment on that, any ideas that you want to relate to us.
Good point. Yes, that reel is still available.
Yes.
It's saved onto our page as a square on our profile. So you can watch it and you can even drop comments in and we'll be checking it and we can relay that information to Chief Johnson. Thank you for that reminder. So on Tuesday, did any of the feedback or questions that you received, Chief Johnson, did any of them surprise you? Or
No,
stand out?
they really didn't. They were focused again on community policing efforts. In other words, the areas that individual districts can provide services to their community. It's a core component of our training initiative. So I fully expected it and listened to that input. And we do it every year when we focus on community engagement.
Great. So let's take a step back and can you provide our listeners an overview of what is the Master Training Plan?
So on an annual basis, it sets forth the curriculum for the upcoming year for officer and supervisor in service. That's where we bring officers back to the academy for retraining, refresher topics, the command staff, detective and specialized units, and the recruit program.
So is the plan public? Like, can anybody read it and access it?
Yeah, the plan is published on the department's website, so it's available for view.
And
Great.
an easy way to find it, I tested it out on Tuesday. Just Google NOPD's Master Training Plan, and it should come up on the first link.
And it is, a PDF document that you
Mhm.
can review, and it's broken up by different sections. So let's talk about the curriculum that exists for NOPD's Academy. Can you summarize what the curriculum might include for new officers?
So the Recruit Academy is set at 25 weeks. It's geared to all aspects of police work necessary for a recruit to then enter the Field Training Officer Program. The Field Training Officer Program is a continuation of the academy, and that's where officers go in the field with the training officer and are obligated to do tasks and get graded along the way as they proceed through their journey.
So is it different from the curriculum that you might receive if you're an experienced officer?
Yeah, the experienced officers have already completed the academy and field training and gained street experience, and the in-service program brings them back to the academy for actually 8 days of total training over the course of a year. This includes firearms qualification, use of force, simulator scenarios, driving, first aid, physical tactics, and classroom work that's determined by the training needs assessment.
Wow. So can you describe what the use of force scenarios might
Yeah, we have a
include?
system at the firearms range that is called Vertra, and it actually has live video action scenarios with the officer having to make a response on de-escalation or to apply the use of a taser or to use the firearm in an ultimate response.
And you're saying that all experienced officers actually have this offered to them again, a total of 8 days out of that year.
Yeah, we bring them
That's
back
one
for
of the-
1 day just to do that and go over the use of force policy and the factors of de-escalation and the ability to apply those in a crisis situation.
And Chief Johnson, with the training plan that you all do, who writes this training plan for NOPD?
Well, I'm responsible for the training plan.
And who approves this plan?
Well, the academy commander and then the chain of command all the way up to the superintendent. The superintendent signs off on it.
Does it have to go in front of the federal monitors or the DOJ or the judge?
Yeah, they certainly have a review of that plan as well and actually contribute to some of the needs assessment as well.
And also, I'll do a shameless plug. We also get a
Mhm.
chance to engage Chief Johnson on the front end, and we're members of the Training Advisory Committee, which also includes members from the police community advisory boards. And Who else is a member of the Training Advisory Committee?
Well, Department of Justice, the FBI, the District Attorney's Office, the City Attorney's Office, as well as academia. And we have a couple universities that are contributing to that team as well. And what's interesting about that advisory committee is that we look for the community input through that committee as well. And from the Independent Police Monitor, you've actually been working on some of our training. And Jules Griff has participated in courses for the last 2 years on in-service on active listening. So we're very appreciative of that.
That is true. Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, we are very appreciative for that. And it's been a great opportunity to be able to talk about some of those. I mean, they're often labeled soft skills, but I would say they're human skills. How to be able to listen to someone, show empathy, and truly engage with individuals who might be experiencing the worst day of their lives in a way that is communicating respect and information effectively. And so
making people feel comfortable.
yeah, we've really enjoyed teaching at the academy and getting to have that partnership. So speaking of partnerships, do you ever collaborate with other police departments on the creation of the curriculum?
Yeah, I do research with law enforcement professional organizations, their published findings as to best practices and what other agencies are emphasizing.
Could you name any of the other?
Sure,
Agencies?
IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, they do research and look at best practices for training academies, the Department of Justice, and some other law enforcement websites as well.
Great.
And do you ever review the training plans for other police departments when creating this curriculum as well?
Well, yeah, I think also other departments have looked at ours.
Really?
Yeah, so I know for Minneapolis, for example, is under a consent decree or about to get in one, and they looked at our training plan and adopted elements of it as best practices for their training needs assessment process as well.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Are there any local partnerships out of curiosity?
Well, we always have cooperation with Louisiana Post, and that's the peace officers and standards training. And Louisiana Post brings all the academies together for regular meetings, assessments, and even training of our instructors and some curriculum.
Interesting. So many of us are unfamiliar with what training might even look like inside of the police academy. And, for me, if I was to envision it, maybe I would just be envisioning a lot of sit-ups.
Lots of exercise.
Yeah, running a mile, maybe some hand-to-hand moments where you're practicing takedown
Yeah.
or sparring. But can you describe what the academy might really look like to recruits? It can't just be sit-ups, right?
So it's a structured process. It presents information in a sequential approach, which talks to the legal aspects courses and then the application of that learning. It builds upon previous knowledge. There are a mixture of both classroom learning, scenario-based practical exercises, problem-based learning activities, and tactical skills. And they're spread throughout, and we try to relate each one of those to the courses that they've had before.
That's a lot. So
It's a busy day. They 7.5 hours straight training every week, and it's 25 weeks, so it's pretty demanding. It often exceeds 25 weeks when they have to work special events because they're also detailed to those things as well.
what do you mean
So
by
they
that?
assist in Mardi Gras, they assist in Essence Festival, Bayou Classic, and so on, which is kind of, in a good way, they can relate to the community because they get to work some street closures and some basic, not law enforcement activities, but they're out with the community for those special events, which is maybe unique for someone who's from out of state and hasn't seen those events.
I believe that. And I'm curious, since we've officially entered the Atlantic hurricane season, are they going to be touched on for any of that work?
Typically not. I think they're going to be, we'll stay in class as long as we can keep them there unless we have to depart the agency at that point. But no, they're not going to work the hurricane, but they will work some special events throughout the year and through the holidays.
So our police officers, this is a huge commitment. Are police officers paid for this? Are recruits paid for this commitment?
Yes, they're paid.
So
In fact, it's a very attractive salary to those individuals considering a career with the NOPD.
Really?
Yes.
All right. Well, then anyone who's listening,
I kind of want to know what the attractive salary
I
is.
know. Can you tell us? Oh, you don't know?
I don't have it offhand.
Yeah, but we believe it's attractive. We will take you at your word on that one. So, what format? You mentioned that there's like building on previous trainings. There's scenario based, problem based, tactical skills. It's hard to envision what the format of that is. Is that in person instruction? Is that online? What does that look
Yeah,
like?
the Academy intent is for instructional design is to identify when traditional lectures are appropriate, enabling officers to learn best through lectures, discussion, and even brainstorming. And instructors seek out those opportunities when officers can learn best through a hands-on approach, actively exploring the subject material. And almost all of our learning objectives are instructor-driven, and we do incorporate some homework assignments and study activities recruits must complete individually.
Homework. That's
And
that's fun.
You say a lot of things are instruction driven. Are they all always police officer instructors, or do they be instructed by other people as well?
No, we utilize outside instructors, including lawyers. Health department has some special victims assistants that provide, and the victim supporting agencies. There's a multitude of community support activities that relate to sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse. All of those type of communities offer support to our training and do a really good job at helping us get that message through.
Well, that's interesting. Hearing about victim support organizations in the health department being touched as instructors of your coursework. Is this related to how the academy might build in like real world community issues, like how to respond to calls that are about mental health crises or youth conflict or interactions with individuals that are currently unhoused? Is that like a component of your training scenarios or
Sure.
your curriculum?
Yeah. In fact, the training needs assessment that I recently conducted in CIT, crisis intervention, involved housing. It involved mental illness support. For instance, the training that we're doing this year is focused more on how to handle and respond to children involved in a domestic violence incident. We spent time on stay away orders and protective orders for adults, but we didn't want to lose oversight of the children, and that's where the health department stepped in and gave us a great deal of support in how to interview and how to relate and how to ease the stress and tension that would be involved with the child as a victim.
That is great to hear. And I just also want to flag that stay away orders and the competency, the comfort to be able to read the differences between stay away orders and peace bonds and to know how to apply that to an interaction with a member of the public was a piece of feedback that we received on Tuesday night as well from the community, that they wanted to make sure that officers felt equipped on how to read those kind of confusing legal documents and how to make arresting decisions if necessary based on them.
Yeah, and the crisis intervention training, it differs each year depending on what topics we feel we need to cover. So, for instance, the year before, we covered autism because that is a different response than a mental patient type incident. And autistic individuals show different indicators, and they need to be handled differently. So we spent time on that. And again, this year we're working on children, and next year we'll probably be working on the concepts of how to recognize depression, because that again is different from a traditional mental illness, a diagnosed illness. And it is something that officers can intervene if they recognize the indicators, not only to the community, but also within our department, to each other. And so we're looking at the self-reflection aspects and follow up with an officer assistance program on that, which we feature every year.
Wow. So can I say that back to you? What you're saying is that you're not just talking about how to recognize depression in individuals that officers might be interacting with in the community, but actually how to recognize those markers in one another to possibly get each other assistance where needed from the officer assistance program.
Yeah, and the point is for both to be able to provide resources and intervene as compared to, you look at postpartum depression and you look at the factors where a mother may be having trouble can the officer recognize that? Does it require stepping in with protective services, and how far should that go? But being able to help is a little different than just handling the call and leaving.
Ooh, being able to help is different than handling the call and leaving. Yes, loving that. That is very important. So I imagine that the people that are teaching all of these courses have to be subject matter experts.
Yes.
Yes. What subjects? Like, can you give us an example of what your subject matter experts might be experts on?
Well, if it's in crisis intervention, then it will be some mental health professionals, homeless professionals, people within the community who have that level of expertise, as well as our own officers who are trained in crisis intervention. And when it gets to specialized investigations, whether it be sexual assault, whether it be scientific criminal investigation, like on a crime lab type of response, those are the individuals who are experts and fully trained, many with doctorate degrees and so on, that would come in and actually provide that coursework.
That is good to hear. And so I think you've answered my next question is what makes the instructors subject matter experts? So I'm happy to hear that. It sounds like these individuals have either credibility, expertise, or even academic backgrounds that make them experts.
Yeah. You have, for instance, in the field of computer forensics, being able to conduct search warrants on telephones as well as search warrants on computers, and where data may reside that is evidentiary value. You have a special level of expertise to be able to handle that. When it comes to handling a trauma-informed victim that might be a victim of sexual assault or domestic violence, there's a special level of expertise that these particular experts can come in and prepare our officers on how to best to handle same.
Okay. That's great to hear. That's what we want to hear. That is how you do community-centered and honestly, like problem-solving centered police work. So in your in your opinion, what subjects or areas of training are just non-negotiable for today's police officers?
Well, this is significant, and I'd say probably most important is community policing, constitutional policing, which is the foundation of our mission statement. Legal aspects, de-escalation, use of force, ethical decision-making is a priority.
And Chief Johnson, we've said a lot. We've used the term community policing and constitutional policing. And we talked about community policing before, but what exactly is constitutional policing?
Constitutional policing is the ability to apply the guidance from the Constitution, specifically the amendments, and then apply those with the legal standards from the state, from federal government, and so on, combined with our policy as to how we conduct our operations and enforce the law. And if you're not knowledgeable of that law and the requirements and the expectations of the community towards that enforcement, then you can't be effective. So that training is critical. Stop, search, and arrest, those type of issues are vital to an officer's performance and the validity of that performance as seen in the eyes of the community.
So it sounds like you're taking really big legal ideas, rights, values, and you're finding a way to apply it to your policies and to what officers might be doing on the streets.
Yeah, the expectations that lead to the validity of our mission need to be well tuned.
Okay. We completely agree.
I agree.
So how does so we asked how the Academy teaches constitutional policing. Can you give us an overview of how accountability, you mentioned ethical decision-making. How is that taught in the Academy?
Well, it's a concept in professionalism and honesty. It is taught throughout the mission, but we also have a program called EPIC or ABLE, Ethical Policing is Contagious, and it encourages our officers to intervene if an officer takes the wrong path, makes some wrong decisions. And the expectation is that they're accountable to the department, to the law, and to the community as compared to each other.
I like that. So it's really about breaking down any stereotypical blue line
Mm-hmm.
and encouraging something greater. It's not just about accountability to a police department, it's about accountability to the community and the
Yes.
Constitution. Good. Love to hear that. Love to hear that. So, can we talk about training on the culture of New Orleans for a minute? What training is offered on the unique culture of New Orleans?
Well, as I mentioned before, we have a specific course for recruits, and we do it early on. So some of our recruits are from out of state, out of town, and we actually give them a course called Cultural Gumbo. And it exposes trainees on the features and customs unique to New Orleans. It's taught by our academy staff instructors, but they bring in actual Mardi Gras Indians, and sometimes in full costume to be able to discuss what they do on a second line and why is the culture inherent within our New Orleans community. They get into food and so on as to the customs, and so it's not a surprise when they get on the street.
I've seen
Like that.
pieces of this,
Mhm.
and I like the ones where they talk about accents.
There is a glossary of terms that are used
And
by
you-
New Orleans residents that somebody from out of state will never know what that means.
And it's crazy because like I can a lot of things come to mind that I don't normally think about. Like we were having a conversation in the office the other day, and Stella made the comment about saying red, and I'm from New Orleans, born and raised here, and I couldn't for the life of me think about like what is she talking about. But then I realized, oh, we do say that like when I'm calling someone red instead of calling that person by their complexion of their skin instead of actually what they are. So there's a lot of things in New Orleans and New Orleanian terms that we use that a lot of things are so second nature to us. We don't realize how different it is.
We wouldn't want an officer assigned to a street intersection and say, take a post on a neutral ground, and they have no
Yeah.
idea what that means.
Oh, so true. Yeah, I mean, the basics, knowing how to pronounce streets,
Mm-hmm.
but also I think understanding the unique culture of how wards and neighborhoods
Yes.
might identify separately and what that might mean.
And
That's
how
so important.
differently wards in each neighborhood may be policed
Mm-hmm.
compared to others.
So you mentioned what the courses might include, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but who teaches the trainings on what it is to be kind of New Orleanian or New Orleans culture?
So New Orleanian staff,
Oh, fun. And
Yeah.
then you bring in people.
and we bring in some outside.
That's great. So do recruits have opportunities during training to actually interact with residents or community leaders outside of a law enforcement setting, like through forums, town halls, or service projects, in order to build any type of early relationships before they're out on the street in uniform?
Yeah, we encourage recruits to participate in service projects, community service projects, and they've done that in the past, both for holidays and some special events as well.
That's cool. And how does the academy prepare recruits for how to engage with communities that might have more of a traumatic or complicated relationship with the NOPD due to, truthfully, the history that might exist?
We feature some training in both bias-free policing, fair and impartial policing, ethical policing, and although they sound like buzzwords, they really mean that, in that we have that obligation to recognize the differences in the community and also some of the history aspects that led to the consent decree as far as training and incorporating those aspects into making sure when they get on the street that they're being fair and they're being impartial and they're treating people with dignity and respect.
Good. So, if you had to guess, is there anything that you think officers wish they had more training on?
Well, when it comes to the recruits, we poll them both midterm and at the end as to which courses they think are the most important and whether they had enough training and so on in it. And kind of invariably, they broad-based answers. In other words, each recruit has a different aspect of what he'd like to see more training in. But as a group, they all feel that they're ready for the next step and graduate to field training at phase. And field training is a continuation of the academy. It's not a separate program by itself. It's the second phase of learning.
And is that in the field training? I was going to say FCO, but the field training portion, is that within the 25 weeks, or is that additional?
That's separate.
After?
That's
Gotcha.
additional. That's about 3 months afterwards that they go through 4 sessions of field training officer ride along
4
every
sessions?
day. Yeah. And there's a score that in an evaluation that is done, an assessment each day as to whether they've had that experience, positive, negative, and so on. And we use some of that feedback as well from the FTOs as to what do we need to improve in the academy and to make them ready for that next step.
So it's kind of like you can look at the FTO program in the way that people look at when doctors graduate and they do their residency.
Yes. Yeah. It's a practical exploration of the learning that they've had, applying that learning.
And if you had a magic wand, Chief Johnson, and you can give every officer one skill of your choice, what skill would that be?
I wouldn't do one skill. I'd say that you have to be well-rounded and proficient in all areas of police work. Each day is a different, each call is different. So you have to be well-versed in everything.
I like that.
I like that. That's a tactful
do.
answer, but I want to. There's not one skill that you would give every officer. Just one.
No, I wouldn't single it out. Everything's so important and it's interrelated. You know, when you talk to the department policies, the procedures, the legal aspects, the use of force, the community engagement, they all intertwine. And you can't really specify one that would be most important.
I have to say, all of my interdisciplinary professors in college would love that answer.
Okay.
Because it is a comprehensive approach to education, and we think that's going to be more effective, and that does mirror national best practice on effective ways to teach material and to make that material as applicable as possible to everyday life. What do you think is the hardest subject to teach in the academy?
I don't think anything is impossible. I think that the style and the methods that we use to bring about that knowledge and those learning objectives are all achievable. So I don't see anything that we would have difficulty with. I mean, our recruits, some may struggle a little bit with academics, and we can guide them along in that path. Others may struggle a little bit in physical training, but we work with them on that. So we want to make sure that it's a valued career, it's rewarding, and that they stay and serve the community.
And you mentioned the recruits that may struggle in academia or physical tasks, and you help the most with that. How do you help in those areas?
We assign a mentor, staff member mentor to each recruit, and their method is to speak, talk candidly with that recruit, find out what difficulties they're having, see if they can offer some assistance, maybe some study habits, maybe some counseling. And they actually, some of our instructors stay up after and both before working on physical training on their own time. So they volunteer to do that extra effort.
So how is the comprehension or the skills assessed in the academy then? Like, how do you know if a recruit is learning what you want them to learn?
Well, we have academic type tests. We try to keep those tests with a scenario-based design so that they can apply the knowledge rather than just memorize it. We do practical reality-based training situations. Those are exercises that are done routinely for both vehicle stops, use of force, taser, and so on. And we link those to the actual knowledge of the law and the policy and procedures that go with it. So it's applying those aspects, and those are graded. They're graded on a rubric as to performance objectives that would be met and achieved during the exercise. And the written tests are graded as you would in a regular environment, academic environment.
So do the recruits get a report card?
They get a grade on their written test, and they get advised as to their scoring on the performance-based test.
So, can someone, if they're not doing too well, can they fail at the academy?
Yes, they can fail out the academy. We make every effort to keep and retain and retrain as many as possible. We've had some recruits that failed out the academy that were allowed to recycle into the next academy. So, we don't want to lose a good candidate. We make every effort to make sure that they can fulfill the duties, but it is a very demanding and intense job, and they need to have the skill sets necessary to adequately perform on the street.
I mean, I agree. It's a demanding and intense job, but that said, I am happy to hear that there's opportunities to be able to help individuals who might not adapt to the material immediately figure out the way that they learn best and how to excel and that they feel supported, because those are the important things. We don't always want to apply the military standards to this paramilitary type of agency.
Yeah, and there's a combination of stress-based learning when it's needed, along with adult learning principles. These are not children that's in school. They need to be taught differently, and adult learning principles involve making them learn and apply that knowledge in real life situations, which is more conducive to learning for their performance.
And we talked about training scenarios also. I just do have one question about those. Who actually creates those training scenarios?
Well, we do it as a staff. I've written many of them. They involve common everyday situations that range from a regular traffic stop or a pedestrian stop, or it could evolve all the way into a use of force with an armed suspect. So it's a variety, and we look to evaluate their skill sets and, again, their application of the knowledge that we've taught them in the classroom.
Do they ever get opportunities to review other officers' body-worn camera footage?
Yes, we use some of the body-worn camera in our classroom presentations, both for recruits and in service.
That's great to hear. I really do think that reviewing body-worn camera footage is extremely illuminating and helpful, both for showing you maybe a new approach you wouldn't have considered, or practically how something is done, or even a misstep, what not to do, what could have opened an officer up to safety concerns or an unnecessary escalation. So that's good to hear.
So, Chief Johnson, you've had a 28-and-a-half-year career with NOPD. Tell us a little bit about, it's now 2025. How has the academy changed since you have gone through it?
I went through the academy in 1974, so recruits look at me as a dinosaur. But obviously, since that year, society, the challenges to law enforcement have changed significantly. I think you have social, generational influences, technology, terrorism, active shooter, 911, all those incidents have happened. The equipment has changed significantly, the tactical methods, and even the educational methods that we use at the academy with adult learning have changed. So it's been dramatically different.
I imagine there's also a lot of changes in how we talk about officer well-being and the community well-being.
Yeah, I think the officer assistance program is relatively new. At least it's from when I went through the academy. Now we're concerned about the social and mental well-being of not only our officers but the community as a whole. So things like crisis intervention, those type of concepts, and the psychology and the methods that are applied have risen dramatically since the 70s.
Oh yeah, definitely. And what about the consent decree? Do you think that's changed NOPD's academy?
I think it established the training standards. It kind of codified what we have already had aligned with our mission and existing post standards. Louisiana Post has its own standards. I guess the change that I would see is it formalized the development of the curriculum through a structured training needs assessment process. That the work that I do on focus groups and identifying topics and trends and so on that might relate to the relevant training schedule for the next year is a structured process that's different.
Okay. Out of curiosity, do the federal monitors go to like the academy and watch how courses are taught?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
I work very closely with the monitor assigned to training. We've implemented the changes. We've achieved sustainment. We've hit all of the targets that were established for us in training, and we've done that for some time now. So they still come back and they take a look, and we have contact as to, I guess, sustainment as to whether we're still fulfilling those requirements.
Good. And just for anybody who's listening, there are still audits and checks
Yes.
on the academy just because they have, fulfilled a lot of those obligations or all of the obligations under the consent decree doesn't mean that now they don't get any type of examination or review. So let's talk about an area where we do sometimes see something that could always be improved upon. There was some report of dropouts in the academy in 2024. Why do you think that is?
I think some recruits make the decision that the significant tasks, the duties required to be a police officer are really demanding, and they may not be suited to becoming a career law enforcement professional. And some individuals don't consider it a career. We need to make sure that they understand that this is a commitment for a long period of time. And if it doesn't work out, we do our best to try to retain them, but it's possible that they just don't see it as a fit.
That's fair. Not everything is going to be a fit for everyone. The academy also provides career advancement and professional development, right?
Yes.
So for the people that it is a fit for, being a police officer, the academy can provide supervisor training to leadership in police organization training. What is that like? What does that look like?
Well, that's a significant commitment, leadership in police organizations for supervisors. And the department encourages every member to seek promotional and leadership opportunities to become future leaders. I started off as a police officer and went all the way up to superintendent. And I'm sure that that's the intent we would have for every officer and every recruit. And the reason we teach leadership at the academy is because those skill sets required for an effective leader ultimately influences the culture and the performance of its members.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you hit on my next question, which was going to be, why is it important to teach leadership? Isn't that kind of inherent? But I don't think it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is important that people are trained on what it is to be an effective leader, that we don't just assume because you're a good officer, you're going to automatically be a good supervisor.
That's
I think the
so
biggest
true.
step is when you move from patrol officer to sergeant. And
I
that
hear
first
that.
line supervision is so essential to our mission because they are the day-to-day leaders that determine our productivity and our competence. So it's important to reach them early and then prepare them for an ultimate career as they move higher up in the organization.
And as they might move organization to organization,
Mm-hmm.
we're giving them skills that could help them in any leadership capacity. And hopefully it will be a leadership capacity here. But as we recently saw with Lieutenant Nicole Powell, who's left NOPD to go to Seattle to be a deputy chief, and we've lost a lot of our deputy chiefs to go to different departments and be chiefs. And that's a good thing. We want to be able to see people become the leaders that they want to be. And it's good to know that we're training effective leaders that other departments want.
And other departments look at the initiatives that we've created to improve upon constitutional policing, community policing, training. And they look at those aspects and, again, research us for best practices.
Mm.
So I continuously get requests for how do we do this? How do we do a training needs assessment? How do we do an annual training plan? And then adopt that. And even the monitors have offered our services to other police departments as research as well.
That's good to hear. So I noticed we're coming up on time. I'm going to plug our phone number again. It's 504-582-94 22. So if there's anyone out there listening that's like, oh my gosh, I have to give some input into the 2026 master training plan, now's your opportunity. Please call in. And while we're waiting for that call, Chief, what have you learned from the community that has helped you shape how officers should be trained?
I think effective community and constitutional policing can have a significant impact in crime reduction and improve the safety of New Orleans citizens.
Mm.
And their recommendations towards how partnerships can be established and how we can undertake efforts with individual citizens on a daily basis are significant to engagement.
And
I-
Chief, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, I completely agree. I mean, I think those are lessons that we learn
Mm-hmm.
from the community all the time in our work in public forums.
Yeah, and especially the paying attention to how you engage the community. Again, we'll bring back to a point made earlier that our community is the greatest ally, and a lot of times they want to be our partners in, making sure their neighborhood is actually safe and they feel okay coming out of their doors at night or no matter what time of day it is. So community engagement is a very, very important thing to have among our officers in our community to make sure that they're working together.
Yeah, and we put a particular focus on problem solving and what role the officer could play in that. And typically, officers go from call to call, they're busy, and yet they have that one-on-one meeting with a crime victim or a person who's reported a complaint. And you can use that opportunity to look further to say, okay, is this an issue that's more pervasive in that community or that neighborhood that's affecting their quality of life?
Mhm.
As compared to just one call and let's handle it and leave. And because we're training them to look for those opportunities to say, how can we engage, not just going to a community meeting,
Right.
but how do we engage on that one-on-one interface and then build that into some sort of partnership? Because there's probably more than one reflective area within that neighborhood that is of concern that we could address.
Absolutely.
And I see that we have a call. Gabriel, you're on the air with the Monitors mic. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Stella. Thank you. Earlier in the show, I'm just giving some information. Earlier in the show, you guys were talking about recruit salary. I just had that information because it is competitive, and I thought people might like to know.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's $46,885. That's an annual salary, and the information is on the NOLA.gov website if someone was interested.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for letting us know that. And also, I recognize your voice. Are you a member of our police community advisory boards?
I have been. Yeah, it's
You are.
Gabriel Bordnews. Yeah.
That's great.
Past 4 years, I was on the 2nd District.
Awesome. Awesome. Do you have any feedback that you would like to give on the training plan for 2026?
I've just been listening. I'm excited to hear that there's a lot of, I think, consideration of how the police interact with the community. That's something that's important to me, that police treat people like people
Mm-hmm.
and not just a problem to be solved. So I'm excited to hear that. And, the problems I hear around the rest of the country, I'm actually happy that I've never really heard that sort of problem here. So fingers crossed, things seem to be going well. At least that's my opinion.
Great. Thank you for the feedback and thank you for the call and for that information about the competitive salary.
Thanks, Gabe.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, great. Well, that was very helpful, and I think Gabe was at our public forum that we had the other night too. And I remember that he also brought up First Amendment issues as something that he always wants to see the NOPD look at in the training that recruits are receiving and experienced officers are receiving. And by First Amendment, that was some of the feedback we received.
Yes.
It's about how does the police engage with our protesters, with people that might be filming the police,
Mm-hmm.
with individuals that that are going to be doing any type of First Amendment action. and then might have a police encounter. And so we do want to see the police stay trained on those topics.
And you mentioned the Police Community Advisory Board. I actually have a focus group WebEx call this coming Monday night with all of the 8 district leaders of the Police Community Advisory Board. So I'd encourage the leaders of those boards to kind of poll their membership and community members as to ideas, because that's what the purpose of the call is. How do we get better? Where are opportunities for training that we should prioritize?
That is so true. And if there's anybody listening, in your police district, you're going to have a police community advisory board. They are posting on social media, often on NOPD News, on that Instagram platform and Facebook platform, and you can find out when yours is meeting, who your representatives are, and reach out to them directly with any recommendations that you might have on trainings that you would like to see adopted for the 2026 training plan. And please do that before this Monday call, so that way all of that information can get to Chief Johnson and be incorporated and considered.
And I'll actually be working on this plan for the next couple of months. So if any follow-up information is gained either by your office or through PCAB, I'm open to listening and adding it in. It doesn't need to be finished until August. So I've got a lot of work to do in the meantime.
That's good to hear. All right. So this is the summer of feedback, the summer of training feedback. Please get it to the academy, get it to us, get it to your police community advisory board members, get it to your police districts. However you want to provide it, that's fine. Just get it out there so that way your voice can be heard and your opinions can be considered in how our officers are trained to work with us.
And just a quick plug for the PCABs as well. Just get familiar with the PCABs that are in your district, so you can make sure that you have that direct link to NOPD to voice your concerns of your neighborhoods and your particular community. Because again, my community is the 4th district, but it may be something different that's going in the 6th district that you need to actually reach out to that PCAB about, and just make sure you get in those spaces to have your voices always heard.
So, Chief Johnson, in our final moment, I would love for you to reflect on your nearly 5 decades of time at the NOPD across leadership, operations, now training, and tell us, what has been your favorite role?
I guess it was fulfilling to be appointed as deputy superintendent under 3 different mayors. That's a feat that I'm very proud of. And I achieved the responsibility of superintendent. I guess my favorite role was really working as a street officer and a detective. As you get higher, you can make more things happen effectively to help the officer on the street, but that's probably the role I enjoyed the most. And I took that with me as I moved up through leadership roles. What tools and resources could I give street cops to be able to do their work effectively? And that's the attitude that I maintain as a leader all the way through.
Great last words. Great. That's great. Thank you so much. And I mean, I love that answer. I love that answer. I really do hope that everyone in the police department values their time working in the community and being on their beat.
All right. And that's a great character to bring as someone that's a director of curriculum.
Yeah.
So kudos to you. Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Monitor's Mic. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in and staying engaged with the crucial conversations we're having about police oversight and community safety. Thank you so much to Chief Johnson from NOPD's Academy for joining us today on the Monitor's Mic, and we appreciate you sharing your experiences and lessons learned through your work in the criminal legal system in New Orleans. We thank you for all that you have done throughout the years. If you missed any part of today's show or want to catch up on past episodes, visit www.nolaipm.gov. You can find and follow us on YouTube at NOLA IPM. You can also follow us on social media for updates and news, on Instagram at NOLA OIPM, and on Facebook at New Orleans Independent Police Monitor. Until next time, stay informed, stay involved, stay committed to building a safer community, stay dry. And this has been the Monitor's Mic.